let's talk about tonight. This deadline that President Trump has set, 8 p.m., has threatened to destroy a civilization. How does an investor process that? Is it a bigger upside risk or downside risk?
How fucking dehumanizing to boil down a threat to murder millions of people into, is this upside or downside for shareholders?
You could help build the only independent news outlet, always on the ground with the people, for as low as 16 cents a day.
Corporate media, they've been lying to us for years, and you're going straight to the people.
Flint, Michigan.
Brooklyn, New York.
Government sending one more you to the residents of Chicago.
We need as many independent voices as possible, and that's why what you guys do is so fucking important.
Covering what the corporate media covers up.
By now, you have likely seen the threat from President Donald Trump to kill the entire civilization of Iran that he made earlier this week. A sentiment that I wish was an exaggeration on my part, but it is not. Almost as enraging as that threat to use the U.S. military to, I guess, murder millions of people and commit mass-scale war crimes is the way that the mainstream media has downplayed that threat or tried to rationalize or sane-wash it in so many different ways. And CNBC might take the cake by asking the important question, won't somebody think of the shareholders in all of this? That is the question that CNBC asked live on air.
Nowhere to hide.
So, Mike, let's talk about tonight. This deadline that President Trump has set, 8 p.m., has threatened to destroy a civilization. How does an investor process that? Is it a bigger upside risk or downside risk?
I think the market is trying to stay balanced on both feet because I think it's hard to discern that type of rhetoric as, a promise of something very destructive and long-lasting happening, to distinguish it from what somebody might say if you want to sort of build up a lot of hoopla before you de-escalate.
How fucking dehumanizing to boil down a threat to murder millions of people into, is this upside or downside for shareholders? What's the risk? What's the benefit here to investors, to millionaires and billionaires who pump money into the stock market and turn it into a graph of rich people's feelings while the rest of the country is left to scramble and fight over the scraps of what is left behind? I think in all of this, we should not lose sight of what President Donald Trump actually said, so that way we don't end up following into the same traps that CNBC did just there. This is actually what he said. A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. However, now that we have the complete and total regime change where different, smarter, and less radicalized minds prevail, maybe something revolutionarily wonderful can happen. Who knows? We will find out tonight. One of the most important moments in the long and complex history of the world. 47 years of extortion, corruption, and death will finally end. God bless the great people of Iran. That's what CNBC saw fit to boil down to. How do investors feel about this? It is such a commentary of the late capitalistic hellscape in which we are currently living, where that is the focus that corporate press puts its focus on, not only because CNBC is focused on Wall Street in the entirety of its, with the entirety of its existence as a, financial news outlet, besides the fact that there are many, many different ways to actually cover the economy in this day and age, in a way that we are demonstrating ourselves here at Status Coup. When I was on the ground for the No Kings protests just a few days ago, this is what people were telling me about how they saw the economy right now.
Fall away from worshiping oligarchs is really the major tone that I've got in my heart. Just people that have way more money than they know what to do with, not helping out their fellow man. I want to go back to the glory days of, people being taxed appropriately to fund institutions like libraries and schools and museums, to better off our culture.
The glory days when government just kind of funded public services.
Yeah, exactly. The glory days. Yeah.
We will continue to offer this kind of coverage here at Status Coup News. And the best way that you can support us in doing so is by going to statuscoup.com/join. We would welcome your membership for as low as $5 a month. You go to support our on-the-ground reporting efforts, and it's those on-the-ground reporting efforts that have led us to hearing from people in the streets about how they view this economy. They're not talking about the war in Iran through the lens of how will it benefit shareholders. They're seeing that kind of talk, and they are seeing through it and identifying that there is an elite class in this country that is siphoning away the resources from everyone else. Right now, John Farina and our own Michelle Dow are on a tour through the Midwest to document the economic struggles of working people right now. That's something that CNBC could undertake, but instead they are asking the important questions of just how will the stock market take into account President Donald Trump's threats to murder an entire civilization in one night. But of course, it is not just CNBC that is having these sorts of reactions. We are also seeing reactions from elected Democrats as well. This is reporting here from NBC News, where they say more than 70 lawmakers, including a handful of senators, said in separate social media posts that Trump's cabinet needs to invoke the 25th Amendment to the Constitution and declare him unfit to serve. Congress should impeach and convict him, or both. This article goes on to quote from many more Democrats in both the House and Senate who voiced similar sentiments, calling on the invocation of the 25th Amendment, which is something that has never happened in the history of the United States, using the 25th Amendment to remove a president. But it also offers members of Congress an out and a way for them to shirk their own responsibility. My hat's off to Ed Markey there. He actually does bring up the prospect of impeachment, that is something that, people, that elected leaders in the House and Senate should be undertaking right now. And that absolutely is a step that Congress has the authority and perhaps should be exercising its authority to do, to remove someone who is so trigger happy in the White House as to threaten civilizational calamity here in the modern world. Should that person have their finger on the button, so to speak, for the United States of America? I would say probably fucking not. We should note that President Donald Trump's threats did end up seemingly play into, him attempting to then declare victory by the end of Tuesday, where a tentative 2-week ceasefire was apparently reached between the United States and Iran, with the idea of negotiating a more long-term deal does seem to be in the cards in some capacity here, but it's hard to read this deal as anything other than a capitulation to Iran and the United States waving the white flag here. This is reporting from CNN, where they say Iran had put forth a 10-point proposal, which the U.S. views as, quote, a workable basis on which to negotiate. It included regulating passage through the Strait of Hormuz, terminating attacks on Iran and its regional proxy forces, the withdrawal of U.S. forces from the region, compensation to Iran, the lifting of international sanctions and unfreezing of assets, and a binding UN resolution to secure any ultimate peace deal. Now, you're not going to catch me, faulting the United States for withdrawing its troops from the Middle East and from the hundreds of bases that it maintains around the world and the tens of thousands of U.S. troops that are stationed in foreign countries at any given moment. I think that money can and should be spent on actually improving the lives of Americans. And I don't think that our imperialism abroad is really something that redounds to the U.S.'s benefit. It only gets us mired in these forever conflicts. The U.S. would likely benefit from stepping back, but it's hard to read the U.S. seemingly finding these points of negotiation as a workable jumping off point as anything other than the surrender of the U.S. in this war. We will continue to offer this kind of coverage here at Status Coup News, and the best way that you can support us in doing so is by going to statuscoup.com/join. We would welcome your membership for as low as $5 a month. You go to support our on-the-ground reporting efforts, and it's those on-the-ground reporting efforts that have led us to hearing from people in the streets about how they view this economy. They're not talking about the war in Iran through the lens of how will it benefit shareholders. They're seeing that kind of talk, and they are seeing through it and identifying that there is an elite class in this country that is siphoning away the resources from everyone else. These are things that aren't lost on working people, nor are the president's threats lost on them as well to kill millions. They see through that and see that what an unstable position this country is in right now. If being able to lift up voices like that on the ground is important to you, again, please go to statuscoup.com/join. It is through your support, through those $5 a month, that is able to keep us doing this truly independent and on the ground reporting.